Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, Fatima, good evening. How are you? Welcome to Update, where we bring you up to speed with what's been happening news-wise on the Isle of Man today. So coming up in the next half hour, as Safeguarding Week continues, we're going to hear how the police's approach to this issue has changed over the years. We'll also hear how the DOI has made failings in responding to a Freedom of Information request. And Michael United Football Club sheds some light on why so many players have left their first team recently. We'll also, of course, look at how the weather's shaping up and keep an eye on traffic and travel as well. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can do so very easily. Text 166 177 or drop us an email, studio@manxradio.com. It's just gone 5. Let's join Christian for a roundup of today's main news stories.
The Isle of Man's Detective Inspector for Protecting Vulnerable People is stressing the force will identify and pursue those who seek to target the most vulnerable in society. Sam Cannell has been telling Manx Radio the constabulary's approach to safeguarding has changed a lot in recent years.
With the onset of COVID and the fact that we closed our borders, our younger community were being approached by those that would seek to exploit them.
The Information Commissioner has ordered the Department of Infrastructure to provide information relating to a Freedom of Information request which was submitted more than 2 years ago. The IC found the government department made numerous failings in responding to the request for all correspondence relating to proposals which would see the closure and removal of the island's heritage railways. Dog bylaws won't be introduced just yet in Derby following a decision at the Commissioners' meeting last night. Board members agreed to focus on education instead of committing to implementing bylaws for the time being. And Pippa Lavelle, a chef who had a successful career on the island, is taking part in this year's MasterChef.
The lights, the smells, the heat, 50,000 cameras around you whilst you're trying to do something.
She'll be coming back to Manx Shores and hopes to action plans for her restaurant Verza to make a return in pop-up form. In international news, the Archbishop of Canterbury has announced his resignation, saying it's in the best interest of the Church of England.
Nobody is criticising the police here. Why not? It was reported to them. They were not interested.
That's Anne Akins, who broke the story in 2017. Justin Welby's decision follows the publication last week of the Macon review into barrister John Smyer's abuse of children and young men. There's been a surprise jump in the rate of unemployment in the UK to 4.3%. Meanwhile, wages are rising more slowly than they have for the past 2 years, with earnings growth easing to 4.8%. And the BBC has confirmed Gary Lineker will step down as the host of Match of the Day at the end of the season after 25 years. They say the former England striker will be hugely missed on the show. Those are the Update News headlines next at 6.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. It's going to be dry with clear intervals and light winds tonight. Temperatures will, though, be around 4 Celsius, so there will be that risk of a slight grass frost. Dry with some brightness possibly at first tomorrow. It will soon turn cloudy. Does that make sense? It will soon turn cloudy with the risk of some light and patchy drizzle at times later. Light to moderate northwest winds and temperatures will be around 12 Celsius. Sunset this evening was at 4:21. I still can't get used to looking out the window and seeing how dark it is at this point. Sunrise tomorrow morning will be at 7:43.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts. Now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Direct cremation is just that, an affordable and simple cremation without all the costs associated with a funeral service. Find out more by visiting directcremation.im or phone Direct Cremations on 478 422.
You listen to Update here on Manx Radio FM. It's just coming up to 5:05. Well, as we know, this week is Safeguarding Week here on the Isle of Man, and this year the focus is on all-age exploitation. We heard yesterday from the head of the Isle of Man Safeguarding Board, Leslie Walker, about what her team does, but today we're turning our attention to the police. Sam Cannell is the Isle of Man Constabulary's Detective Inspector for protecting vulnerable people. He told Siobhan their approach to safeguarding has changed in recent years.
I think with the onset of COVID and the fact that we closed our borders and we had more control as to who was coming and going from the island, and we had tighter restrictions around the importation of our post to the island, that really helped to expose the issue of certainly our younger community and our juveniles were being approached by those that would seek to exploit them with the purpose of importing controlled drugs via the post and using them either to accept or to deliver packages, parcels, etc. And certainly that demographic allowed us to recognise to the greatest extent what the problem was on the island, and I think from there, in collaboration with getting the multi-agency safeguarding hub up and running and working more closely with our partners in social care, in health and with education, that it's really helped us to come together to form a structure for how we can actually tackle exploitation.
I mean, how do the police tackle this big topic? And also, what advice, I suppose, do you have for parents or carers who maybe are worried about their kids? Yeah,
so I think it's true to say in this day and age, the access to children and young people by those that would seek to exploit them is far greater than it ever was. For instance, everybody's got a mobile phone in their pocket now. Everybody's got access to social media, various social media platforms and messaging platforms, which are really hard and can be sometimes difficult to infiltrate. However, a large part of the constabulary's work is around pursuing offenders. So if we receive information and intelligence which supports somebody being exploited, the constabulary, whilst working with our partners to support that vulnerable person and to hopefully remove them from that situation, the constabulary's focus is on the perpetrator and how we can target that person. So whether that be by virtue of arrest, investigating any offences that have been committed, or by just taking some real proactive and direct action towards that person to make it really difficult for them to operate in that environment.
That is Detective Inspector Sam Cannell. You can find much more about this subject at manxradio.com. There's some really helpful articles on there, and there will be more on breakfast tomorrow morning. 7.5 minutes past 5, the Chief Minister Alfred Cannon once again faced questions about healthcare funding from former Health Minister Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper in the House of Keys today. Now, earlier this month, you might remember, Manx Care was asked to refrain from further cuts, with the Council of Ministers rejecting some cost-saving proposals. How then does the health body bring down that estimated £15 million overspend? Here's Mr Cannon.
We're asking Manx Care to continue to make every effort to find the efficiencies and the savings to deliver on their cost improvement plans that they have indicated within their budgetary forecasts, and to do everything possible to reduce the current level of over-expenditure that is being forecast.
I wonder then if the Chief Minister can confirm, in light of his renewed commitment to Manx Care doing everything possible, if he can confirm that the further efficiency measures, savings, cuts, whatever you want to call them, are not going to be impacting on frontline services. The reason I ask is because on the list of things he circulated to members in response to a previous question, not rolling out the shingles vaccine was on that list. I'm now hearing that may in fact not be going ahead, pending a future decision, but it was on the list that the Chief Minister has previously said has been rejected. So can you just clarify that further cuts to frontline services are not actually on the table, and any savings Manx Care are being asked to make are being asked to be made in the non-frontline, non-patient facing areas of the service?
Obviously, with an arm's length body set up in the way that Manx Care is set up, then should the Manx Care determine that they're going to seek some efficiencies within, say, shingles programmes, then that is entirely for them to decide on an operational basis, providing it is safe to do so. Council did not support a number of programmes which I've already outlined, which Manx Care put forward for full cessation or either closure. We've asked for those programmes and for those services to remain open. Manx Care find that they can find efficiencies within that, then they should do that.
That's the Chief Minister and Laurie Hooper, MHK, speaking in the House of Keys today. I'm just going to make a prediction. I don't think we've heard the last of that issue. It's coming up to 5:10. Now, it's been found that the Department of Infrastructure made multiple failings in responding to a Freedom of Information request from Manx Radio. The Information Commissioner has ordered the department to provide the information which was first requested more than 2 years ago. Sean Cowper has the details.
In September 2022, Manx Radio asked the DOI for correspondence relating to any proposals for the closure and removal of the island's heritage railways. In November of that year, the department refused to provide the information, claiming it was exempt because it relates to the formation of policy. The matter was referred to the Information Commissioner's Office for review, and the complaint was upheld. Alexandra Delaney Bhattacharya found the DOI failed to comply with the request within the standard period, failed to demonstrate it undertook reasonable searches for the information, failed to provide advice and assistance, and failed to justify its application of the exemption. She was unable to determine whether reasonable searches were undertaken and found there was no record of a public interest test being applied, adding the DOI appears to apply a blanket exemption to responses involving Council of Ministers papers instead of considering them on a case-by-case basis. As a result, the department is now required to carry out searches, review each item and provide the information to Manx Radio. If the department believes it needs to withhold some details, it must provide the information to the Commissioner with a copy of the data and a convincing justification. The department has 30 days to comply with the findings and 28 days to appeal against the decision. The review also found the DOI identifies the category of applicant, in this case media, when processing FOI requests. Dr. Delaney Bhattacharya says all requests must be handled blind, and while this doesn't identify the specific applicant, she says it isn't in accord with the Freedom of Information Act and has recommended an immediate cessation of that practice.
Sean reporting there. Well, in response, the Department of Infrastructure says it acknowledges the findings of the Information Commissioner and will respond to that decision notice within the specified timeframe. 5:12. A bill hoping to legalise assisted dying in England and Wales is said to have many of the same safeguards as the Isle of Man's proposed legislation. The Manx bill is currently going through our Legislative Council, as Amy Griffiths reports.
Details of the UK's proposals have just been published and state a person will need a life expectancy of 6 months or less and sign off by 2 doctors and the High Court. People with a mental health issue won't be eligible. Kim Leadbeater is the Labour MP behind the bill. She says it's about autonomy.
There's a very clear line between the bill that I'm proposing and euthanasia, someone else doing the deed. This bill is about autonomy and it's about choice. So it has to be the decision of the individual and it has to be the act of the individual. And I think, again, that just creates that extra level of safeguards.
Here on the Isle of Man, Ramsey MHK Alex Allinson's private member's bill is currently progressing through the Manx legislative system. It's successfully passed through the House of Keys and is currently being considered by LegCo. Last month, LegCo voted in favour of the principles of the Assisted Dying Bill and agreed to progress it. However, an amendment was also passed to include an evidence stage, so members would be able to consider the UK's legislation when it was published. Should the law be enacted here, a person will need a life expectancy of 6 months or less, be signed off by 2 doctors, and have lived on the island for at least 5 years. Dr. Allinson says it was useful to read the UK bill, which he says has many of the same safeguards and provisions for choice and dignity for those with a terminal diagnosis as the Isle of Man legislation.
Amy Griffiths reporting. Well, we're going to stay with the Legislative Council because it considered the Reproductive Rights Bill, among other things, today, as Phil Gordon reports.
There were 2 items on this week's Legislative Council agenda. The Attorney-General successfully moved the final stage of the Statute Law Revision Act, which seeks to correct minor errors and inconsistencies within the body of the statute books. Members focused on degendering legislation, including bill long titles in Manx and reference to Macrone's slip in Douglas, but there was unanimous support for the bill. Tanya August Hansen brought the Reproductive Rights Bill forward for an evidence stage.
So essentially the Reproductive Rights Bill it represents a comprehensive, thoughtful, modern approach to reproductive rights and parenthood. It puts everybody on an even footing. with the UK, as well they should be. And it's crafted to sort of respect, uphold human rights, ensure clarity and fairness in legal parenthood, and provide a robust regulation of reproductive technologies as well, and ensure that we're keeping up to date with what's going on elsewhere in the world, particularly in relation to surrogacy.
LegCo heard from 2 fertility and reproduction experts.
So one was Mrs. Michelle Moroney. She's the consultant obstetrician and gynaecologist at Nobles Hospital. So she's our local expert. And the other was Professor Richard Anderson. He's a PhD at the LC Inglis Professor of Clinical Reproductive Science at the Centre for Reproductive Health. That's an Institute of Regeneration and Repair at the University of Edinburgh. So he's right at the forefront of, working with the HFEA, with the Regulatory Authority, Licensing Authority in the UK. And he's very, very much, sort of an innovator, an innovative thinker about all of these things and, forward-thinking, future-proofing.
The bill returns to LegCo for clauses stage in a few weeks' time.
Phil Gorn reporting. It is just about 5:15.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, the good news is the police aren't reporting any issues on the road. If you know any different, do let us know, 166 177, or you can email studio@manxradio.com. All looking good down at the airport, and with the steam packet, the Manxman is on its way back to Douglas, expected to get here in a few minutes actually. It'll be around 5:50, and then heading back out to Heysham at 7:15.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with Quayside.
Now, Michael United Football Club's caretaker first team manager insists they'll be working hard to rebuild the club following significant developments over the past 2 weeks. Speaking to Manx Radio, Michael Corlett was asked to shed some light on what the reasons were behind a recent mass exodus involving the previous first team boss and at least 12 first team players.
Don't really know how it's happened or why it's happened so soon. Obviously, we're a club out in the sticks in Carmichael, and it's tough to attract players. So a lot of the players that we had, and a lot of players who have gone, are all Douglas based, and they've all come out and helped us at Carmichael for a good number of years now. And I think long term, we obviously knew these players wouldn't last and stick around forever. Trying to win Division 2 now for a couple of years, and I just thought maybe after this season or so, we might start losing a few to other teams, which is understandable. And then a few weeks ago, unfortunately, after one of the games, our manager decided to resign and said that's him. He's decided to move on. And then what happened then was a couple of players decided to go with him, which, no problem with. And we thought we'll be okay with a couple of players gone. And then it developed a few more, and then a few more. We kind of knew sometime it would happen, but just to hit it halfway through the season is a bit of a tough one. We've got a couple of players remaining, and then the young lads from the combi are all really keen to step up and play in the first team. We're going to work as hard as we can. The goal is still just go as high up the table as we can, and we just got to change our aspects a little bit. Not going to be title challenges, but who's to say we can't spring an odd surprise? We looked at our squad, and I think active players we had, if everyone was available, I think we had 20. Numbers are getting pretty low, but we have had a number of players come to us and get in touch and say, can I come down to training and see you? There's also other clubs around the island. Other clubs have been in touch with me and said, we're struggling as well. Teams in Douglas, teams all over. I know Maloo are struggling. I know gyms have been struggling. St George's have given up games, and there's other teams that only have a combi team. There's teams that only, Pulrose last year only had one team. Now they've got both. Douglas Athletic currently just have their combi team. So there's plenty of teams around the islands that need to boost their players.
That is Michael Corlett from Michael United Football Club's first team. And you can hear the full extended interview with Mr. Corlett on the Manx Radio Sportscast, which you can find at manxradio.com. 5:18. The company behind plans to create the first medicinal cannabis cultivation facility on the island says there are exciting times ahead. Now, we heard from Lewis last night that Grow Lab Organics has been given the green light to build its production site and headquarters near Ronaldsway. There was unanimous approval from the planning committee yesterday, but questions were raised about how green the facility actually would be, with one committee member saying it would be a drain on the local infrastructure. Well, Lewis has been catching up with the Grow Lab's Chief Scientific Officer, Charlie Price.
It's been a long one. It's been understandably fraught with sort of misunderstandings, lots of people being slightly worried about what might unfold, and I think over time we've lent into those sort of concerns. We've tried to give as much information as as transparently as possible, and I think everyone now seems to be right behind it.
A focus today on the green credentials, and you really had to argue the case that this wouldn't be a drain on resources, but there will be a connection to the national grid, won't there?
Absolutely, yeah. Understandably, people have wanted to know how we're going to use energy, make sure that we're using it appropriately, which is really important given the energy crisis that we face, and I think today was a great opportunity to tell our story and gain a bit more extra confidence.
Quickly run through the green energy credentials of the building itself. Is it passive? Is that the right word?
Passive's not necessarily the right word. Energy efficiency certainly is. We're sourcing green energy in the first instance, and then we're making sure that that energy we use, we recirculate, we recycle as much as possible to both lower our operating costs but lower the amount of energy associated with the production of this cannabis product. So we've optimised the roof for solar photovoltaics. It's always, producing our own energy has always been a huge thing for us, but we didn't want the application to be dependent on it. So the roof is ready, and once we start growing, we will eventually fit solar over time. We are already going to be capturing rainwater from the get-go and using air source heat pump technology to recycle all the waste heat back into cooling.
We've been told about a year from the moment of approval. Is that still the case?
Sure. So we've got a construction phase that we expect to be around about 12 months, and then we've got about a 6-month fit-out, commissioning and audit procedure before we're actually able to produce something commercially.
That's a co-founder and Chief Scientific Officer for Grow Labs Organics, Charlie Price. Now, did you watch MasterChef last night? If so, you may have spotted a familiar face amongst the contestants, Pippa Lovell. Originally from Leicester and now living in Sheffield, Pippa spent much of her career developing and operating the restaurant Versa right here on the Isle of Man.
It's the professional MasterChef quarter-final. These 5 chefs triumphed in their heats. And tonight, they face 2 tough challenges designed to test them even further.
It's nerve-wracking. I thought I'd feel a lot better than last time. I actually feel 10 times worse, which is delightful. Cooking in a film environment pretty much sent me over the edge. The lights, the smells, the heat, 50,000 cameras around you whilst you're trying to do something, whilst being asked about things you love and you believe in and you want to talk about for hours, whilst having ADHD, thinking about 80 other thousand million things. Honestly, I'm actually overstimulated thinking about it right now, trying to tell you about the experience. It highlighted a few weaknesses of mine that actually I'm not okay with, and now I'm absolutely determined to change. But yeah, also highlighted how important it is for me that I create the right environment for me to flourish. And well, that's the bloody Isle of Man, really, for me. Yeah, it's great over here and it's really stimulating in many, many ways, but it's too much. Next for me is to finish off my business over in the UK. Got a lot of pop-ups planned and events, and obviously the idea of this is to grow, take a break, rejuvenate, learn, connect, meet new people and keep developing the concept, whilst also spreading the green love and the vibe to other people and get them on board, whilst also shouting about the Isle of Man. Don't worry, I've not abandoned it. And yeah, the plan is to come back. I want to come back, obviously. It was only ever a respite, a very well needed one for many, many reasons. But yeah, I'm going to come back. A few ideas in the pipeline. I'd like to help and support and grow other businesses and other people, whilst also Versa will probably be back as a pop-up on the side of that as well.
Well, we very much look forward to that. Great to see Pippa on MasterChef last night, and every single thing crossed for how she progresses on there. 23 minutes past 5, we're going to turn our attention to sport with our sports editor, Rob Pritchard. I didn't forget your name. I didn't.
Yeah, I'll be worried for a second there.
Well, I was just thinking about whether or not you would be a good cook is probably what I was thinking. Are you a bit of a chef? Could we see you on MasterChef at some point?
I don't think I'm going to be worrying any other contestants on that programme anytime soon.
Okay. Maybe I should head there now, actually. Anyway, sports news.
Indeed. So starting off tonight, Isle of Man mixed martial artist Alana Pritchard has won gold at the 2024 IMMAF World Championships. The fighter from Ramsey claimed top spot in the senior women's super welterweight class in Uzbekistan by beating Angola's Ana Fernanda via technical knockout during Saturday's final. The 21-year-old had also beaten one of Uzbekistan's local competitors in the previous matchup in the semi-finals, also via TKO. Among her other competitions results in 2024, Pritchard took silver at the ADCC Open in Cardiff on the 30th of March in 2 different classes.
Elsewhere, the Isle of Man under-16 girls hockey side have advanced once more in the England Hockey Knockout Championships. As one of a trio of Ireland junior national teams in respective EH Tier 2 Cup competitions on Sunday, the girls team claimed victory at North Stafford 10-9 on penalty flicks after a 2-2 draw in regular time. The Isle of Man's goals there came courtesy of Sophie Partington and Safi Mia. Elsewhere, the Isle of Man under-16 boys suffered a narrow 3-2 defeat to Preston, despite initially fighting back from 2 goals down as Robbie Valerga scored a brace for the Ireland visitors. The under-18 boys were beaten by the same scoreline as their opponents. Neston produced an impressive comeback victory after the Isle of Man had led through goals from Cameron Room and Ben Dougal. 3 other Isle of Man junior national hockey teams will be in action over the next 2 weeks. The first of those is this coming weekend as the under-18 girls host Chorley on Sunday at the NSC in Douglas at 12:30pm. And former Ireland resident Harry Payne and teammate Kevin Rousseau have been crowned 2024 FIM Sidecar World Champions. The Steinhausen racing duo dramatically claimed the title by winning both the sprint and main races at the final round in Estoril, Portugal, across last Saturday and Sunday. In the latter 17-lap feature race, they pipped title rivals Marcus Schlosser and Lucas Schmidt by just 0.053 seconds to claim the championship. Previously at Ballasalla and now based in Europe, Payne has spent several years competing in the championship alongside Rousseau, who this year was also passenger to Ben Birchall at both the TT and Southern 100.
Flipping heck, that was a very narrow win. Oh gosh, Beth, I need to stop. I need to stop. But incredible. We didn't talk to you yesterday, but we did talk about the fact that obviously Cav has now officially retired, and what a way to bow out.
Absolutely, and I saw the images of the guard of honour that he got before the race, and I did hear a couple of his parting comments that it struck him only a few kilometres from the end that these are the final few kilometres of my professional cycling, racing career, if you like. We don't know if that's going to be the end in cycling. There's been all sorts of rumours. Could he end up in management? We've also seen him take on an ambassadorial role at a car company as well in the last few months, so who knows what the next chapter is for Mark Cavendish. I don't think it'll be the last time we'll have heard his name in cycling generally, even though in terms of racing he has now finished it, and what a glittering career it's been.
Really has been, and as you say, quite emotional to see some of those scenes at the weekend. Rob, thank you. That is all from Update this evening, but do stay tuned to Manx Radio tonight, because coming up next at 5:30 it's Countryside with Simon Clark and Kiri Kermode. Then Chris Kinley will be here from 6pm with Greatest Hits Live. The Folk Show with John Barker is on at 9, and then Rianne will be with you from 10pm with After Hours. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Remember, you can find out more about all tonight's top stories at manxradio.com. We have the extended interviews in the Manx Newscast and the Sportscast as well. Whatever you're doing tonight, have a great one, and we'll see you again here at 5pm tomorrow.